The person who destroyed your peace is sleeping soundly right now, not troubled, not haunted, not lying awake the way you have been lying awake, replaying every moment of what they did with the specific precision of someone whose nervous system cannot seem to release it. Sleeping soundly, and somewhere in the part of you that has been trying to make sense of this, somewhere in the exhausted place where you have been carrying the weight of something that should have been shared and was not. Something about that truth makes everything worse, not just the hurt, the specific incomprehensibility of the hurt, because you keep returning to the same question. How? How do they do it? How do they walk through their ordinary life? How do they smile in photographs and make plans and respond to messages and exist in the world as though the specific thing they did to you did not happen, as though you did not happen? Carl Jung spent decades studying people who hurt others and then lived as though they had not. And what he discovered is not what you want to hear, but it is the only thing that will finally give you the understanding you have been searching for. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will understand something about the person who hurt you that nobody has said directly. And once you understand it, the waiting will stop. Here is the first thing Jung discovered. They remember, not vaguely, not in the edited version where the edges have been softened and the sequence has been rearranged to make their role more palatable. They remember with the same precision you do. Every word, every look on your face in that specific moment, every choice they made and what it produced in you, they remember. Jung was unambiguous about this in his clinical work. He said that the unconscious does not forget, not ever. Not one moment of genuine harm inflicted on another person disappears from the psyche of the person who inflicted it. What looks like forgetting is not forgetting. It is something far more psychologically sophisticated than that. Jung called it the shadow defense, the specific mechanism by which the psyche protects the conscious self-image from information that would require it to fundamentally change. The person who hurt you has not forgotten. They have constructed an entire psychological architecture whose sole purpose is to prevent the memory from reaching the part of their mind that would have to do something about it. Here is how that architecture works, and understanding this is what will finally release you from the confusion of waiting for them to acknowledge what they did. Jung identified what he called the persona, the social mask every person constructs to navigate the external world. Most people's persona is a partial construction. They know the difference between who they are presenting and who they actually are. But some people's persona has become so load-bearing that dismantling even a small part of it threatens the structural integrity of their entire sense of self. The person who hurt you and acted as though nothing happened has built their identity around being someone who does not do the specific thing they did to you. They are not a person who betrays trust. They are not a person who causes that kind of harm. They are not capable of the thing you experienced. This is not a position they consciously chose. It is a psychological necessity, because if they are a person who did that, then everything they believe about themselves, the kind parent, the loyal friend, the fundamentally decent person who is trying their best, all of it becomes negotiable, and the psyche, Jung discovered, will go to extraordinary lengths to prevent that negotiation. Jung called this shadow projection, the unconscious act of taking the parts of yourself that you cannot consciously acknowledge and depositing them into someone else. Here is what it looks like in practice. The person who hurt you could not carry the knowledge of what they did, not because the knowledge was not there, but because carrying it consciously would require facing something about themselves that their current psychological structure cannot accommodate. So the psyche does something both brilliant and devastating. It reverses the narrative. Suddenly, they are not the person who caused harm. They are the person who was misunderstood, not the person who broke something irreparably, the person who was dealing with something difficult and whose good intentions were not appreciated, not the person who watched your reality crack and did not stop it, the person who was actually the one struggling. And you, who experienced the harm with every nerve of your actual body, become in their interior narrative the problem, the one who is too sensitive, too dramatic, too unwilling to see their perspective, too attached to a version of events that does not account for how hard things were for them. Jung said this mechanism is not conscious malice, which is the part that most people find impossible to accept, because it is somehow easier when the person who hurt you knows exactly what they did and simply does not care. What Jung documented was something more unsettling. They genuinely do not experience themselves as the person who did what they did. The shadow projection is so complete, so efficient, so structurally necessary to their continued functioning as someone who considers themselves a decent person. that they have rewritten the story in real time. And they believe the rewritten version. But here is where the psychology becomes something you can actually use. Because Jung did not just document this mechanism. He identified what it reveals about the person running it. He said that the capacity to hurt someone and then protect yourself from the knowledge that you hurt them requires a specific kind of psychological immaturity. Not stupidity, not cruelty as a character trait. Immaturity, the specific developmental limitation of someone who has never been required to develop. The psychological capacity to hold two truths simultaneously. I am fundamentally a good person, and I did something that caused genuine harm. Jung called the ability to hold both of these truths simultaneously the mark of genuine psychological development. He called the inability to hold them the mark of someone still operating from what he called the inflated ego. The ego that cannot tolerate any information that threatens the self-image. That requires reality to always confirm its version, rather than developing the capacity to update the version when reality contradicts it. The person who hurt you does not have a psychological structure that can hold both truths. Not because they chose not to develop it, but because nothing in their life up to this point required them to. Every time they caused harm before, the same mechanism ran, the narrative reversed. The projection landed on someone else, and they walked away with their self-image intact, reinforced even by the specific experience of having convinced themselves that the person who was hurt was actually the one who was wrong. Jung identified what he called repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to repeat familiar patterns until they are made conscious. The person who hurt you is not repeating this pattern with you specifically because there is something about you that invites it. They are repeating it because it is the only tool they have. Because the alternative, developing the psychological capacity to genuinely face their own capacity for harm, is the hardest interior work a human being can do. Jung was clear about this. He said that genuine accountability, the kind that goes all the way down, the kind that does not stop at apology, but requires actual integration of the knowledge that you are capable of causing harm. That kind of accountability is one of the most demanding acts of psychological development available to a person. Most people never arrive there, not because they are monsters, because the path to it runs directly through the most uncomfortable possible encounter with the self. The encounter that says, I am not only the person I present to the world, I am also the person who did this. Both of these things are simultaneously true, and I have to find a way to hold them at the same time without collapsing into either denial or total self-condemnation. That interior work is exactly what the mechanism of shadow projection is designed to prevent, because the psyche runs the projection before the work can begin. Every time, automatically, without requiring conscious direction. Here is the specific insight Jung arrived at that I want you to hear clearly, because this is the part that will finally allow you to stop waiting. He said that the closure you are looking for cannot come from them, not because you do not deserve it, not because what happened to you was not significant, not because the harm you experienced was not real, but because the specific acknowledgement you need would require them to use a psychological capacity they do not currently possess. You are waiting for water from an empty well. The well is not refusing to produce water out of malice. It is simply dry at a depth that would produce what you need. Jung said that expecting genuine accountability from someone who has never developed the capacity for it is one of the most psychologically costly mistakes a person can make. Not because the expectation is unreasonable, because every moment you spend waiting for it is a moment your own healing is organized around them, around their timeline, their development, their eventual arrival at a place they may never arrive at, and your healing, your actual healing, the kind that does not require anything from them, cannot begin while it is organized around their movement. So here is what Jung discovered about the actual path through this. He called it the withdrawal of projection, not in the direction you might expect, not the withdrawal of your projection onto them, the withdrawal of your psychological investment in their version of the story. Every time you replay what happened, hoping to find the angle that will finally make it make sense to them. Every time you construct the perfect argument that would make them see. Every time you imagine the conversation in which they finally acknowledge what you know they know. You are keeping your interior world organized around their refusal, and their refusal has no interest in your interior world. It is busy maintaining their own. The withdrawal is the specific act of reclaiming the energy that has been going into understanding how someone who did what they did can be living so peacefully. And redirecting it, not toward forgiveness necessarily, not toward resolution, not toward any particular emotional endpoint, toward your own life, the one that is continuing, regardless of whether they ever develop the capacity to acknowledge what they owe you. Jung said that the most radical act of psychological self-preservation available to someone in your position is this: to stop making their development a prerequisite for your own, to understand that their ceiling is their ceiling, that what they can and cannot access about themselves is a fact of their current psychological development, and not a reflection of your worth or the significance of what you experienced. To recognize that the person who hurt you and acts as though nothing happened is not at peace. They are defended, and defense is not peace. Defense is the chronic expenditure of psychological energy to prevent the encounter with a truth that the unconscious is trying constantly to surface. They will not always be able to maintain it. The shadow does not accept permanent containment. Eventually, something will break through the architecture, a moment of clarity at 3 in the morning, a situation that mirrors the original harm, closely enough that the reversal mechanism cannot process it in time, a relationship in which someone finally refuses to accept the projection. Eventually, something will reach them. But when it does, you will not need to be there for it. You will have already moved, because your healing did not wait for theirs. It went somewhere they cannot follow, into the specific interior territory that becomes available. When you stop needing anyone else's acknowledgement to know, what happened to you was real, and what you deserve is something they were never equipped to give. If something in this finally named what you have been carrying, the specific question of how they can live the way they live, let that naming be the beginning of something. Not closure in the sense of resolution. Closure in the sense of completing the circuit that was drawing your energy. The circuit that was running between your experience of what happened and their denial of it. Break it, not by confronting them, by withdrawing the investment. And subscribe, because what comes next is for the person who is ready to stop waiting for accountability from someone who does not have the psychological architecture to provide it, and start building the life that does not require it.